Okay. What did he say?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to go here. I'm going to start just a minute or two early because this is going to be a long business meeting. I don't mean long, it's just probably going to go until time for us to go, which is an hour from now. So, welcome. It's a great day to be a Kiwanian. And as always, kids need Kiwanis and Kiwanis needs you. Thank you for being with us today. Can we stand for our defining statement? Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world, one child, one community at a time. Now the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Clay has a song for us today, and he said we did not need a songbook for it. So your own, son.
All right. Well, look at what's on the projector. They're birthdays. So why don't we sing happy birthday? We're going to sing it to a dear Kiwanians. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kiwanians. Happy birthday to you. Thank you so much. That cuts out half of my presentation, but that's okay. That's good. That's good. Guests today, we have a couple of guests, and let me, I'm sorry, invocation comes first. Gwen Vess, please. Gwen will have our invocation.
Let us pray. Accept our thanks for this day and all its blessings. Guide and direct our club, its leaders, and our actions. Grant that each of us may feel our responsibility to Kiwanis, to our community, and to our country. Bless our fellowship today and bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies. Amen.
Thank you, Gwen. We appreciate that. Have a seat, please. We have a few guests today, and let me recognize them. Jim Walbrink.
This is Paul Schrader, a fellow University of Missouri alumnus, and that is his second visit, and he's filling out his application right now.
Great. Let's give him a round of applause. We appreciate you being with us, and you are welcomed. And also George Ramsey has a guest today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce Randy Bailey. I was at First Citizens doing some stuff a couple weeks ago, and he said, "Where are you headed?" I said, "I'm going to my Kiwanis meeting." He said, "I was president of my Key Club." And I said, "Well, you need to be a member of our club then. Come on." So here's Randy Bailey. Thanks for the welcome.
We're glad to have you today, and especially you being a Key Club member. You are prepared to be here, and thank you so much. Thank you for it. Anybody else have a guest today? If not, let's move on. Does anybody have any membership welfare items? Well, that's good news here at the holiday.
Yeah, Courtney is doing really great. I know that because she's getting sassy again. Her husband, Jeff, both of them are living with Nancy and I right now because we are closer to Big Duke where he has to go every day. Jeff had his transplant yesterday, so he looked real good this morning when I saw him, and things seem to be going good. Thank you so much for all of your support for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you let her know how much we miss her and that she's in our prayers. Some announcements. Robert Cooper is offering a $250 gift certificate to Angus Barn for the person that gets the most members this year. Keep working on that. We appreciate it so much. We have a board meeting this week, so if you're on the board of directors, on Thursday of this week, we will meet at John Collar's office, and you'll get a email on that in the meantime. Thursday is the Boy and Girls Club Christmas party. Please be there. Tuesday is the board. That party is at the Boys and Girls Club, which is right off of, is it Martin Luther King Boulevard? Again, Google it if you're not exactly sure where it is. Off of Raleigh Boulevard, okay? I get all those boulevards mixed up. They got more than 3 letters in them. In Shelby, we only had 3 letters in every street. Okay, let me bring up our speaker now. Today, we're going to have our treasurer, John Collar, to talk to us about the budget and some of the shortfalls of the budget and what could be done, and a survey that you're going to be taking a look at just real soon.
So Buck, I have on my calendar Tuesday, December 19th, the board meeting at my office. Tuesday, December 19th. So that's where I'll be.
You are we moved it because
But you're the president. You can have a board meeting anytime you want.
the board meeting is Tuesday the 19th.
So I'm here today on behalf of the board. I offered to do a presentation on the club budget. Rest assured that we're in good financial health right now. There's some things on the horizon we need to deal with now, not wait. Now, I said I would be happy to do this, but I was not prepared for having prospective members attend this session. So this is adding a little bit more pressure on me. Not really. So the purpose of my presentation today is just to update you, the club membership, on our budget, particularly how rising costs have impacted the club's operations, and what changes we might want to consider so that we avoid a cash flow issue down the road. And as I said before, I'll attest that the club finances are strong today, but if we do not make some changes, or at least take under consideration some changes, that is not going to be the case, I would say, in about two years. So with that in mind, I'm following Hugh's instructions on how to advance this thing, so good. It worked. Thanks, Hugh. The overview, this is a short presentation. There are 10 slides here. Give you a little bit of background. I want to talk a little bit about where we are now, and then planning ahead. Before I get into the details, I want to give a broad overview of the club's budget. There are really 2 budgets with any Kiwanis club. There's the operating budget, which is the focus of today's discussion, and then there's the service budget. Now, the service budget is pretty much self-sustaining, based entirely on the proceeds from the Pancake Breakfast fundraiser. And the funds from that project fund our service projects and that kind of thing. We do have some Pancake Breakfast expenses that we have to pay. And at the end of the year, in the fiscal year, if we got any surplus in that service budget, we are required under the tax code to send that surplus to a 501c3, a charitable organization. Now, historically, that has gone to our foundation. And so that's that. There is not any discussion on the service budget. I'm happy to field questions about the service budget, but that is not the focus of today's conversation. Yep. Well, and this is a great question. So the golf tournament is not a club fundraiser. That is a foundation fundraiser. And so I don't know what we net. I want to say, Andy's not here today, I don't believe, but I'm going to say probably somewhere in the neighborhood of between right around $8,000. I'm not quite sure. Andy will have to correct me on that. It's a little bit less, 6. 6 to 8, okay, a little high, but 6 to 8. We're talking about the column in the middle, the operating budget, which is funded entirely by your dues, your quarterly dues that you pay the club. And the things that come out of those dues that we pay for are meals during our club meetings, like what we're having today, our district dues, our international dues, rent for this facility. We pay rent to enjoy the facilities here at Highland, and the various membership socials that we have during the year. There are also some administrative costs that we incur. So those are the two budgets. Now, we have the flexibility of moving funds from the operating budget to the service budget, but we cannot move funds from the service budget back to the operating budget. So one of the solutions to our problem that we're facing now is the answer is not, well, just take money from the service budget and plug the holes in the operating budget. You can't do that. Take a look at our reserves over the years. I'm going back to 16, 17. That's a special year for me. I was your club president that year. And so I've got 4 rows here showing what the net surplus is on the operating budget, the cash balance at the end of that year, the recommended reserve, which recommended to me years ago was 2/4 of operating expenses. So you do the math, if you double that amount shown on that row, that's basically our club's operating budget for the entire year. So we're somewhere around $90,000 to $100,000 a year in expenses. And then I show, well, how much more cash that we have at the end of the year compared to the excess, compared to the recommended reserve. And you can see every year we've had excess reserve. The COVID years there, can't draw a lot of comparison to those 2 years. So that's why I highlighted those. There's not much that we can draw from those years, but you can look at a few things. First of all, the net surplus, we try to break even. There were some crazy year in the COVID years where we had a lot of excess surplus, but what is particularly concerning to me is coming out of COVID, the deficits that we started to see as a result of some pretty hefty cost increases. So if you look at the last 2 years in particular, this last fiscal year, we had a net loss of $17,000. I've never seen a net loss from our Kiwanis Club of Raleigh to that magnitude, and I can tell you that it's going to be even worse this year if we don't do something about it. So if you go down to that bottom row, the excess reserve, let me say, when I became president in 16, 17, we had a reserve around $80,000, and in the years before that, it got as high as $110,000. And so there was a commitment by the board to try and give that back in a way that, would give back to the membership. So you might recall that we had the various social functions that we had, the charter nights, the mill burning nights, the spring social, where we didn't charge anything for you to attend those functions. And that was where we were pulling from those reserves to kind of draw it down. And so there's been a concerted effort to draw those funds down to get them more at a reasonable level. So we're sitting now at the end of the last fiscal year with $23,000 of excess reserves. I'll also tell you, well, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about the major cost drivers in our budget, and there are really 3 of them. They're international dues. Kiwanis International charges, I want to say it's $142 per member. The thing about Kiwanis International is they don't collect that over the course of the year. They collect it all at once at the very beginning of the year. So think about that. So $142 per member. We have, I don't know, somewhere around 175, 180 members right now. I just wrote a check a few weeks ago for nearly $25,000 to Kiwanis International to cover our international dues. Fortunately, we have these reserves that I'm able to pull from. There will come a time when there won't be any reserves and we won't have the cash to pay that, but they get that up front. One other thing I want to draw attention to is the international dues row. You notice that it's been pretty steady over the years, 25,000, 24,000, 21,000. But I want to point out that we've had a significant decrease in our membership. Back in the years where Chris White and KC were president of the club, we had upwards of 250 plus members. Well, I can tell you now it's down to about 175, 180 members. Yet the international dues really hasn't fluctuated much. And that's because we've had some increases in the district dues we'll talk about. Meal costs, same thing. If you look across the board, except for the COVID years, you know, right around $40,000. Last year it was $45,000. Here's the kicker though. Before COVID, we had 100 plus people attend these meetings. There was over 100 people, almost every Friday, there was over 100 people here. We are averaging about 65 people now since COVID. I get the bills, we get charged $18 a head plus a $50 service fee. And there's roughly anywhere between 60 and 65 members on average to Friday meetings that we're paying for. But you notice the food costs haven't gone down. They're still where they are, you know, equal to or exceeding what they used to be. Carolina's District Kiwanis raised their dues from $30 to $60 a member effective this fiscal year. They doubled their dues. That's collected by Kiwanis International. So with that check I wrote to Kiwanis International, those district dues were included in that. But it doubled. Now, Kiwanis International, the trustees have, you know, proposed measures at every international convention since last year and years back to raise the international dues, and it's been voted down, as Chris White can probably attest to, every year by the delegates. But we know that that measure is going to come back before the next convention. At some point, Kiwanis International is going to approve a dues increase. The delegates are going to have to. So we're looking at a dues increase for international with meals. You know, we were paying $10 a head before COVID. We got back into it. The Meadows was gracious enough to come back out here and provide their service again, but it went from $10 to $15, and then most recently it went to $18 a head plus a $50 service fee each time they deliver or provide catering. So the costs are going up. I mean, that's almost doubling of the meal cost, and that is our number one cost driver, the meals. I just mentioned this, pre-COVID meal costs were 10, post-COVID 20, 21, 15. I've already mentioned that. Club dues history. This is interesting to me. I joined in 2003, 2004. It was $115 a quarter. And we did not have a dues increase for 20 years. 20 years we sat at 115. Now we had a robust membership. You know, I mentioned before we had years where we had 250 plus members and we had 100 on average. That's 100 and 150 members that are not coming to the meetings and they're paying for the meals. Well, that's why our reserves were up as high as they were. So we could afford going that long, but now we've had such a reduction in the membership level, a 30% reduction by my calculation, and an almost doubling of the meal cost, and that's had a tremendous impact. We did raise dues to $120 in 2022. We had that staggered 4-year plan to raise it $5 every year. By the time we get to 4th year and we were at $135 a quarter, it's not going to be enough with the cost that we have today. Right now, they're $125 a quarter, which is part of that structured 4-year increase. We're still in the middle of that. So my question, when we started looking at this, I'm like, well, do my dues even cover the cost? What are my costs to be a member? Well, if you came to every meeting, and this is not likely, but if you came to every single meeting, we have 40 meetings a year, and $18 a head for the meal cost, plus I'm allocating part of the $50 service fee to every head. It's a little over $750 a year. The rent, we pay $650 a month in rent to Highland United. I'm just dividing that number by the number of members that we have in the club. So it's nominal per person, 38 bucks. And then our our international district dues, $142. So the cost to every member, if you came to every meeting, over $930. Your quarterly dues are $125 a quarter. So if you came to every meeting, we're having to fork up about $430 per head to cover the cost. We're not covering even the basic cost. And I'm not even talking about the administrative stuff. We have administrative stuff. We pay our secretary to do the bookkeeping every month. We have supplies and things like the aprons that we have to buy from Kiwanis International when we have new members. A lot of things like that. We're not even covering that cost. And then you get into the socials that we provide, and those are big costs. And so you see where things are heading. So what do we as the board expect in the future? We do expect International to raise their dues. It's going to happen sooner or later. We do expect rising food costs. The food costs are just outrageous. I mean, in my opinion, it's $18 a head. But I know you all go out, you eat lunch, you see what you're paying for just the basic stuff. I mean, it's just really expensive. And then rising rent. Now, I have to give it to Highland. They have been very good to us, and they have held that $650 a month rent for years. But I do know even their trustees are looking at raising the rent. I was informed that a couple of years ago, and they've held off. Will they continue to hold off? Probably not. At some point, they're going to have to raise the rent. So, what is your board doing? When we started digging into this, we decided to put together a committee, most of which were past presidents and a few club leaders, to talk about where we're at and what kinds of things that we could take a look at to either reduce cost or have a cost sharing arrangement, or maybe we just change things up, how we do our meetings and where we meet and that kind of thing. The board has been discussing this since at least a couple of years. I've said there's going to come a time when we're going to have to deal with this. But before we get to making recommendations and things like dues increases, that requires a club vote. We can't just raise your dues. I think it's important that we get together and have a survey to understand from you, the membership, what is important to you about the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh with regard to our meetings and the food and the kinds of social functions that we do together. I'm not talking about the service stuff. I'm talking about what we're doing right now, okay? So we want to hear from you, and we have a survey. It's going to be emailed out, I believe, and I've got a copy of it here. Hugh says Control-Alt-Delete. I said that's my sign to just walk off the stage, and he can do Control. So we'll have a survey. It's going to be emailed out to you. Where's Control, Hugh?
Sorry. Here, I'll help you out.
Control. See, this is a Mac. I don't. I know.
Yeah, I got you right here.
Look, I know something about taxes, but
Sorry,
the Mac, I don't.
There you go.
All right, so you're going to get is this? That doesn't work. Okay. So this is a copy of the survey. You're going to get this emailed to you. I did it online yesterday. It's pretty easy. Basic questions. It's going to ask you things about, your engagement with the club. Do you come to meetings? Are you involved in this or that? Now there are some service related things in here I'll have to ask you. It says, would you be willing to chair a committee, if called upon? But the things like the cost for charter night, for example, it's about $165 a couple. I mean, is charter night important to us? options. Do we want to continue doing it? Are you willing to share the price, or do you want to consider options? The meadows is another issue. So what we're trying to do now is collect data. And from that data, the board will meet and come up with a recommendation. So that's where we're at now. I'm gonna stop right there and take any questions that you guys may have. Gary?
Hey, let me get you with a microphone here. Gary, real quick.
I have comments. First of all, I don't think we really ought to change much of what we're doing. But I think every 3 years we need to look at a dues increase. Maybe we need to charge a little more for the two functions we have, that sort of thing. I don't have any problem with that. But keep in mind now, the cost of food, if you go to the supermarket, you know the cost of food's going up. I'm in 2 organizations that change venues and change food service, and at first it was great. And then it went to hell and they regretted they ever changed. I'm very happy, but we have to increase dues. I mean, that's all there is to it. And if somebody has to drop out because they can't afford it, so be it.
Well, no, I think it's reasonable for people to pay for events they go to. Now, you might see a drop in attendance, but I think that's a reasonable objective. I, for one, I'm not a huge fan of Meadow, the food. I mean, the barbecue is fine. The chicken's kind of shriveled up. It's not bad, but I mean, I think it's a lot for what we're getting, frankly. I mean, you can get a decent, you can get fast food meals for $10. A good salad or something might be more than that, but those are my 2 comments.
Okay.
I don't know if this is about discussion, but. $18 for a full plated service. This is almost $15. Yeah, so it's just really. And also, I want you to know that the board has shopped food. It's all $20 a person, no matter what we find. So that's been tricky. That's been tricky.
I'd also ask frequency of meetings. Okay, every 2 weeks instead of every week? Every 2 weeks instead of every week? Something like that might be something.
Up front.
I just want to address speakers. I think one of the strengths of this club is coming here and hearing from a variety of different speakers. And on the speaker question, when you select which speaker let's get as many different types of people in the club to speak to us from many different types of service organizations, government, nonprofit, the private sector. I think that's one of the strengths of this club is the quality of our speakers.
Maybe the answer is not reducing number of meetings a year, but it could be reducing the number of social events. I'm not talking about charter night, but do we have to have Mill Bernie night?
So let me say, the questions so far and the comments so far are great. And guess what? I think every one of those issues is in this survey. So when you're answering these questions, please put that in there for the board to hear.
One of the things that I learned many years ago, and I don't know if this will be applicable, but if you don't know how to do something or how to make it successful, then you go find somebody that does. And so I think the issue, all these things probably make sense, but really what you really want is to have more members. And you get more members when you have a more interesting program. And people come because it's interesting. So the issue, though, is when you look around the room, we could be at a lot of different places that they usually call old folks home. The average age here is pretty steep. So the issue is that across the country, what Kiwanis clubs have been able to attract people that are younger, or just people, and how, and what do they do that's different? Because continuing doing what we've been doing is just, we're gonna be out of here. It's not gonna work. And part of that, this is an observation, is we don't have that many interesting speakers. That's fine. I'm just telling you my opinion. And my point of it is, if there were so greatly interesting speakers, there'd be more people here. So, I mean, just look at it, supply, demand. If it was really interesting, they're beating down the door. So my point is that you've got two issues. You've got the age, and you've got what would attract them. And I think it would be interesting to survey or to find out in other states what works, and to have some delegation talk to other Kiwanis clubs that are successful, that have growing memberships, and find out what they did.
Thank you.
So let me take this, Mike. And so I was the chair of that Blue Ribbon Committee, and I'm not going to stand up here and recite it all from memory what we did, but a lot of it has already been discussed, just to cut to the chase. But we pointed out that when we were really rolling in 2014-15, we had this major project going. Younger members felt like this is worth my time because we're doing something substantial. Yes, the programs are really key. It's one of the things that has value. And so, but we said to the board, if you reduce the number of meetings, other clubs have done that, and it's a death knell. And you end up going into the tank. Now, Chris White has told us before that we lost 14 clubs in North and South Carolina as a result of the pandemic. When we went to visit Greensboro and Durham, you think this looks like an older demographic. It was pitiful as other places. I mean, and so it's important to remember that this club is still the cream of the crop, and that we have millennials that want to be sure that they're efficiently using their time. But what we told the board is we need a major projects committee, and we don't mean 2 or 3 people. We need 10 people on here with really good ideas. We need a membership committee that is driving hard like it was with Chris White and others back before, and we need 10 people on that. The way this stuff works, we have to drive all of these things because that ends up making it all better, and then we can help more kids, which is a big part of why we're here to begin with. So I don't know how much discussion we need here. You all need to hear these things because people on the board have already been digging into all that. There's people looking at changing the venue for where we would meet. And we didn't bring Meta today because if we need to talk bad about Meta, we want to be free to do it. So, but anyway, we need the members. We need the major projects. We need to know that we're still the best. And by the way, Rotary is far worse off than we are. Yeah, Rotary has dropped down to 120 some, and they've had to switch and start meeting at the Tobacco Road Sports Cafe. They're no longer downtown. They're not doing the Cardinal Club or any of those kinds of high dollar things they used to do. So they're struggling. We are better than anybody else, and so we need to remember the glass is half full here. But on the other hand, we can't sit around. We need to take hold and drive this thing and make it better. Okay.
I have a question, or I have a comment. Nick is totally right, as far as I'm concerned. The big thing to me that we are missing is, what do the younger members that are left in the club want or expect the club to provide them? Why? And I hope the survey really takes this into consideration. Why did they join? Is that still true after they joined? What can the club do that they enjoy doing? The club is basically us and programs. I'm not downing the programs. Programs are designed for us. I want to know what the younger people want to hear and hear from, and have that type program and let that drive the club to refresh the club. It's a real issue to me that the younger people are not here, and why aren't they here? And we need to find out. That's the bottom line to everything. We need to find out and address it and go forth on it. Thank you so much.
Phil Kirk has a question.
Believe it or not, I wasn't going to say anything, but I need to follow up on Clay's comments that I agree with. 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, we appointed a committee to determine what you're talking. We need to review that. We need to review that. We had a committee which I chaired. I was the oldest one on the committee, but invited all of our young members under a certain age, and we had quite a few. And one thing we'd been told was that we should set up an auxiliary group or a separate group within the club. And they said, absolutely not. They come to the meetings to network with older, more experienced people. So we dropped that idea right away. But I'll go back and get my notes and see what's on there that might not be on there. But I think it may be time to revisit that issue. Because things have changed in the last 5 or 6 years. And you're a lot younger looking now than you were when I joined. That may be my eyesight.
I really like the meadow food. And I think people that attend meetings are getting their it's a bargain. People that aren't, I'm afraid if we raise our dues, they'll say, hey, I don't even come to meetings. Why should I pay? So one idea was to have the dues cover the expenses of the club, the international, the rent, whatever, and the administration, and then pay for meals as you attend. And that would be done with a charge card on a square or tablet or something. Anyway, but I'm afraid some of the members like Roland Gammon and Cabell who never come, they'll say, oh, why pay that amount?
Hey, Club, may I say something real quick? Just because I've been in a lot of these conversations. One other factor that we've been trying to plan for when we're deciding what to do with these dues is the idea that half the membership doesn't come to every one of these meetings, but they're a really important part of the club. They believe in the mission, they write their checks, and we don't want to alienate them. If you come to every meeting and your real cost is $900, there's this imbalance because they don't come to the meals, they don't come to the meetings, and we do. So we balance that out for everybody. So we don't want to alienate people that don't come to the meeting but still believe in our mission and want to be a part of this club. So one of the options, as he just said, as you'll see at the bottom of this, is the idea of pulling the meals out of our dues. And it's such a huge part of the expense that we could actually reduce dues by a lot by pulling that out. And pulling it out would be, just like you said, where we come in every day and just pop our card or write a check or bring some cash for our plate. And that's just something to have in your head that we've been talking a lot about. When you're doing this survey, that's some of the questions are going to be about that, so you can be thinking about that.
Gary?
It's just a more fair situation that, people that don't come, they're not paying for meals.
I would like to go counter to that. Based on these figures up here that you had on the board, if you did that, then dues would have to be doubled. If it's 900 and some bucks versus 600, it would have to be double.
Well, I think the suggestion was to have members pay out of pocket for the meals when they come to the meeting. So we don't have club dues baked into in the quarterly dues. Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, we did this analysis a few years ago.
Right, yep.
And it's very clear that meal cost is a major issue for us. I personally don't care for Meadow as a caterer. So for me, I'd love to just attend and either bring my own food or just eat at home rather than paying for the meal here, which is not to my liking.
Right.
So, Club, I want to chime in on this. I've been a member since 90, end of 90, so a long time. And I really dislike the food we have. And, you know, people who sit with me at my table look at my plate and they say, "Are you on a diet?" And I say, "No, there's nothing up there I want to eat." And, you know, I remember I was either the president-elect or the president, and we had this conversation about dues. And I said how much I dislike the food. And everybody just stared at me like I had just accused them of murder or something. But I'm happy to pay whatever needs to be paid. But if we stick with the Meadows and we go to paying for the meal, I'm not going to be happy about that, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm hungry when I leave here because I really dislike the food. Sorry.
Thank you for sharing.
That's a survey question.
John?
Yep.
This is a different topic. Going back to the comments that were made about the programs and that we need a major project. For clarification, does Kiwanis International have a major project that they're promoting now, like we've had over the years, like the iodine program and different ones?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm not aware of
So
what International's doing as far as a worldwide, you know, fundraising effort like we had.
Right.
You know,
had about 3 of them.
Yeah.
Eliminate. So when we're talking about projects, major projects, we're talking about local, right? Like coming up with a local project that's a really big.
Yeah, I think something that puts some excitement into the club meetings like we had years ago when we were doing our centennial stuff. That was an exciting time. Everybody could get behind it. We brought in a ton of members. Quite frankly, my perspective is the younger folks, that's what they want to get involved with. It's not necessarily coming to the meetings here and having meals. They want to get involved in you know, projects like that give back to the community.
Well, to answer this question, when we did this back in 2014, we did the survey, Clay Taylor led the thing, and what we learned on the project end of it then, which may still be true, may have changed, was that what the members wanted then in the way of a major project was we had done the neonatal tetanus thing, and we had done the iodine deficiency around the world, and we put 100,000 here and 100,000 there, but the members then were feeling like, no, it's time to have something local. It's time to have something local, something where you put money in, something where you put time in, and something that will benefit the kids, and something that will raise the profile and community awareness of the club. And so we took that survey result, and that's what led to this Centennial Park project that really did turn out to do all those things for us.
Okay, I just wanted to say, so I joined the club in 2011 because I wanted to volunteer and give back. That was a primary reason. The networking component was probably secondary. The speaker component didn't really come into play for me. I have always loved the desserts. I mean, that's part of,
Thank you.
probably tell from my belly. But I will say that one thing that we have done a better job of than in the past is marketing. We need to do a much better job, I think, to figure out where the people we're trying to attract, how do we get the word out about what we do? I mean, we provide enormous benefit to the community, but frankly, I think oftentimes it's not really widely recognized because we don't really do a great job of marketing what we do. We need to do a better job of that. I do think some type of major campaign or major drive or some type of, something like the Lemonade Project or the Centennial Project, something like that, is something that can galvanize us greatly. So I do think that can help drive increase in membership. And as far as the food, I agree. Listen, we did this in 2021, 2020. We looked at food costs, and this is about the best you can do on cost. I mean, if you want anything better, you're going to be spending a lot more money.
Can I say one more thing before we wrap this up? I got a Zoom question too, and it kind of is important. But this is from Bill Watson, who's on Zoom. One of the things that he learned by being membership chair for 2 Kiwanis clubs, this club and the Richmond club, is that young people question the reason for a person to have to pay to do service to its community. That said, this idea of blowing all this up and having humongous dues, you can alienate people by doing that because they're just not going to come pay for it. If the younger people's motivation is to connect with the community and do more projects, we'll have to find a way to get the dues down, not up. So I wanted to second him on that. The other thing is Robert Cooper's suggestion. The suggestion about taking meals out is what happened in the Richmond Club, and it works, but it does change the motivation for coming to meetings. So I just wanted to make sure that those comments were heard.
So I'm going to exit stage right here and let our president close out. But these surveys are very, very important. The board moved its meeting to Tuesday, December 19th.
Thank you for reminding me.
So we hope to have your responses by then because that's an important board meeting as we head into the new year and consider changes. Okay, thank you for your time.
Court. John, thank you very much. And let me just add one thing I heard from questions. I've just appointed some committees for the board. One of them is special projects, one of them is fundraising, one of them is membership. That's for the board. And we're going to be appointing some committees that will take in everybody that's in the organization, but we're trying to just get ideas on the table right now. Thank you all for being with us. Next week is the last meeting before Christmas. 2 things. Kids' Notes. One of our benefactors in the foundation will do the program, so there'll be some Christmas music. The second thing is next week is going to be ugly sweater contest. The person that wears the ugliest Christmas sweater will get a nice prize. I bet you. I'll guarantee it. Okay, if there's nothing else, we are going to adjourn to next time. We're going to do it next. Just don't have the time today.